Program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. And good morning. Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for, once again, Victory Monday, December 15th. Your readers today are
Ted by Jackie.
And I'm Ed Howard. And Ted, we're going to start with the weather today. And the forecast is for cold today with snow accumulating 1 to 3 inches, breezy in the afternoon. Watch for slippery spots. The high will be 25. We'll get a little more snow tonight, accumulating a coating to an inch. The storm total snowfall will be between 1 and 3 inches. The low temperature will be 16. We'll get a couple flurries tomorrow with a high of 32. And our normal high and low temperatures for today would be 37 and 26. Our record high was 71 back in 2015, and the record low was 2 degrees in 1989. And we've had a trace of precipitation, 1¼ inches for the month to date. We're still running, however, about 9½ inches below our normal rate of precipitation. And for today, the air quality index is for somewhere between good and moderate air quality.
That's Buffalo. Wait 5 minutes. From the front page today, we have the headline about state and regional news. An unusual status for measures to make Erie County its own judicial district, allow physician-assisted deaths. On Friday night, Governor Kathy Hochul decided the fate of 37 bills, from her approval of a ban on infant walkers to her veto of a proposal to safeguard renters from facing higher insurance premiums due to the breed of the dog that they own. Hochul will soon act on 122 more bills, including proposed state prison reforms that were delivered to her office, giving her 10 days to sign or veto the measures. And then there are 2 more bills in a more uncertain space. A proposal to make Erie County its own judicial district, and a bill to allow the terminally ill to medically end their lives with the assistance of a physician. Out of 856 bills that passed both houses of the Senate legislature this year, they are the only bills not delivered to Hochul's office. Assembly member Jonathan Rivera from Buffalo, who sponsored the legislation to make Buffalo-based 8th Judicial District consist of solely Erie County, said the reconfiguration of judicial districts can happen only once every 10 years. It last happened in 2007, when the state leaders passed a bill to create a district consisting of Staten Island and New York City. 7 other counties, now within the Buffalo-based district, Niagara, Chautauqua, Cattaraugus, Wyoming, Allegheny, Orleans, and Genesee, would become part of a new 15th judicial district that would also include Steuben and Livingston counties. The legislation also would make Rochester-based Monroe and Syracuse-based Onondaga counties their own judicial districts. Rivera said because the bill affects so many counties, it requires a good deal of deliberation. He also said he was confident it would address a major need. We have not reviewed or changed lines in our area in decades, and there's a wide range of reasons why we need to do it, and there's no sense of waiting another year, Rivera said on Saturday. I'm of the thought that this is something urgent, something that needs to be addressed. There's no real reason why we would wait any longer to address this. The intent of the bill, co-sponsored by Senate Deputy Leader Michael Gianaris from the Queens, is to increase diversity among justices in the 22-county 4th Department of the Appellate Division of the Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court, which covers Western New York. Their memo of support for the bill said a 2024 demographic survey conducted by the state court systems administrative arm received responses from 42 of the district's 67 justices. A single justice identified as Black, none identified as Asian or Hispanic. We're seeing inequity. We're seeing problems. We're seeing issues around representation, Rivera said. Not just among diversity on the bench, but frankly, there's an absence of rural representation also. On June 12th, the bill passed Assembly 96-48. It passed the Senate the same day, 38-21. Every Republican in the Western New York delegation voted against the bill. Every Democrat in the region voted in favor of it. At the time the bill passed, Erie County Republican Chair Michael Cracker called the bill politically motivated. He said Erie County was one of 4 counties in the state where election law cases can be brought. He suggested it was an attempt to eliminate Republican judges from the county and lessen chances of a Republican judge hearing an election law case. The other bill, still undelivered to Hochul, the medical aid in dying legislation, passed the Assembly 81-67 and the Senate 35-27. The bill, sponsored by Assembly member Amy Paulin from Scarsdale and Senator Brad Holloman from Manhattan, would allow terminally ill patients to request life-ending medication. 2 doctors would have to verify that the person had less than 6 months to live, was mentally competent, and was not being coerced. The person's request for the medication would need to be made in the presence of 2 witnesses. Neither could be relatives or heirs. Hochul has offered amendments to the bill, and that would create a 7-day waiting period for patients to get the lethal medication and to require the patients to undergo psychiatric evaluations. The start date of the law would be delayed 1 year, the Gothamist first reported. Mandy Zucker, the executive director of End of Life Choices New York, which supports the bill and previously expressed no opposition to the amendments, wrote in a blog post on Wednesday that her group was concerned with some of the proposed changes and would continue to advocate for changes to the law, once enacted, that will make the option of medical aid in dying more accessible to everyone.
Our next story in the Buffalo News is headline Person of Interest Held in Shooting at Brown That Killed Two. However, in late news this morning, it has been reported that that person has been released for a lack of evidence. But the Saturday afternoon attack set off hours of chaos around the Ivy League campus and surrounding Providence neighborhoods as hundreds of officers searched for the shooter and urged students and staff to shelter in place. The lockdown was lifted early Sunday, but authorities had not yet released information about a potential motive. The shooting occurred during one of the busiest moments of the academic calendar as final exams were underway. Brown canceled all remaining classes, exams, papers, and projects for the semester and told students they were free to leave campus, underscoring the scale of the disruption and the gravity of the attack. College President Christina Paxton teared up while describing her conversations with students both on campus and in the hospital. They are amazing and they're supporting each other, she said at an afternoon news conference. There's just a lot of gratitude. The gunman opened fire inside a classroom in the engineering building, firing more than 40 rounds from a 9mm handgun, a law enforcement official said. As of Sunday morning, authorities had not recovered a firearm, but did find 2 loaded 30-round magazines, the official said. The official was not authorized to discuss the investigation publicly and spoke on a condition of anonymity. 1 student of the 9 wounded students has been released from the hospital, said Paxson. 7 others were in critical but stable condition, and 1 was in critical condition. Providence leaders said residents would notice a heavier police presence, and many area businesses announced Sunday that they would remain closed. A scheduled 5K run was postponed until next weekend. Mayor Brett Smiley invited residents to gather Sunday evening at a city park where an event had been scheduled to light a Christmas tree and a Hanukkah menorah. For those who know at least a bit of the Hanukkah story, it is quite clear that if we can come together as a community to shine a little bit of light tonight, there's nothing better that we can be doing, he said. Smiley said he visited some of the wounded students and was inspired by their courage, hope, and gratitude. One told him that active shooting drills done in high school had proved helpful. The resilience that these survivors showed and shared with me is frankly pretty overwhelming, he said. We're all saddened, scared, tired, but what they've been through is something entirely different. Investigators were not immediately sure how the shooter got inside the first-floor classroom at the Barris and Holly building, a 7-story complex that houses the School of Engineering and the Physics Department. The building includes more than 100 laboratories, dozens of classrooms and offices, according to the university's website. Engineering design exams were underway. Outer doors of the building were unlocked, but rooms being used for final exams required badge access, Smiley said. Emma Ferraro, a chemical engineering student, was in the lobby working on a final project when she heard loud pops coming from the east side. Once she realized that they were gunshots, she darted for the door and ran to a nearby building where she waited for hours. Surveillance video released by the police showed a suspect dressed in black walking from the scene. Eva Erickson, a doctoral candidate who was the runner-up earlier this year on the CBS reality show Survivor, said she left her lab in the engineering building 15 minutes before the shots rang out. The engineering and thermal science student shared candid moments on Survivor as the show's first openly autistic contestant. She was locked down in the campus gym following the shooting and shared on social media that the only other member of her lab who was present was safely evacuated. Brown's senior biochemistry student Alex Bruce was working on a final research project in his dorm across the street from the building when he heard sirens outside. "I'm just in here shaking," he said, watching through the window as armed officers surrounded the dorm. Students in a nearby lab turned off the lights and hid under desks after receiving an alert, said Shangsheng Xian, a doctoral student in engineering who was about a block from where the shooting occurred. Mary Kamara, a junior from New York City, was coming out of the library and rushed inside a taqueria to seek shelter. She spent more than 3 hours there, texting friends while police searched the campus. "Everyone is the same as me, shocked and terrified that something like this happened," she said. Brown is the 7th oldest higher education institution in the United States, is one of the nation's most prestigious colleges with roughly 7,300 undergraduates and more than 3,000 graduate students.
And I've noted several media outlets have also noted that the Buffalo Bills were staying at a hotel within 2 miles of Brown University and were under lockdown for that time. Crazy experience.
Yes.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service, and the time is 15 minutes after the hour. We turn now to the opinion pages, and we start with the editorial by the editorial board of the Buffalo News, and the headline is "Penalties Needed." The subtitle is "Owners of Vacant Properties Have Been Getting Away with Negligence for Too Long." Buffalo has too many vacant properties, several thousand at least, and negligent owners should be held accountable. Toward that end, a couple of city lawmakers believe they know one way to make the owners of vacant properties pay attention: fines and fees. It's a road worth taking. However, the drivers behind this effort have already hit a yellow light. Buffalo's Commissioner of Assessment and Taxation has warned that the city may encounter legal issues if it institutes a new tax. Any new tax would likely require the approval of the state legislature. A fees and fines system may not require the same approvals. That idea needs to be on the fast track to implementation. Meanwhile, owners of vacant properties should act fast. Head to City Hall, pick up the phone, and dial city leaders. Do something to get right with the city, not to mention the neighborhood whose values are being dragged down. Otherwise, they'll have to face whatever penalties City Majority Leader Leah Halton Pope and Niagara District Council member David Rivera can get on the books. The lawmakers are hard at work finding ways to make owners accountable. They started by putting forth a measure recently that would compel the City Finance and Administration Department to investigate a progressive tax on vacant buildings and derelict lots, which could be problematic. There are good reasons these legislators are eager to find a solution. Halton Pope, in an interview with the News, made clear that her Ellicott district was one of the highest rates of vacant land and buildings in the city, while other districts have similar issues. Halton Pope's sentiments resonate with frustrated residents when it comes to vacant property. As she says, quote, "It just doesn't help build up a community, especially in a commercial strip," end of quote. Buffalo must find a way to punish property owners who allow vacant lots and buildings to deteriorate. As just about every city block club member and resident can attest, not only do years of neglect take their toll on our housing stock, there are also well-founded concerns that the vacancies will draw squatters, even criminal activity. The issue of vacant properties was front and center nearly 2 years ago when tragedy struck. On April 27, 2024, two men, fathers of small children and members of Buffalo's growing Bangladeshi community, were shot and killed when they arrived at a Zenner Street home to prepare the house for a real estate closing. At the time, police described the squatter fleeing the house. This event led to an outcry about the thousands of abandoned properties across the city. Rivera again discussed creating a registry similar to the city's rental registry system for vacant properties, where those owners are charged a fee while the buildings are unoccupied. The money raised from the program would be used to fund more city inspectors and Department of Public Works teams to inspect and board up vacant buildings. It was a good idea then and remains so. Something must be done. Whether the solution is fines and fees or some other approach, the mandate is clear. Buffalo cannot afford to let vacant properties continue to damage neighborhoods. Solving this problem would allow hard-earned taxpayer dollars to be spent wisely toward community improvements instead of police and fire responses to properties left to fester. Negligent owners have been getting away for too much, too long.
Our next article, staying on the opinion page, is the Another Voice column, and today the topic is transportation. The author is Ken Johnson, who is executive chairman of Leonard's Express, and he writes, Every product that reaches a grocery store in New York, from milk and produce to meat and packaged foods, depends on trucks like ours. And when the Thruway Authority quietly adds a new fee on the companies that move that food, the cost doesn't stop with us. It ripples to the farms that grow it, the businesses that sell it, and the families who buy it. A backdoor toll hike with zero notice isn't just a bureaucratic nuisance, it's a direct hit to the system that keeps food on New Yorkers' tables. I am the executive chairman of Leonard's Express, a regional transportation and logistics company based in Western New York that specializes in moving food and other essential goods. For more than 30 years, we've partnered with retailers. We move thousands of shipments every month. Last year alone, our trucks logged millions of miles on New York roads and paid more than $500,000 in throughway tolls. Like most carriers of our size, we rely on toll management providers to help handle payments, reporting, and compliance across the E-ZPass network. Now, the Thruway Authority wants to impose a surprise 1% surcharge on those toll management providers starting January 15th. That cost will be passed directly to trucking companies, raising the cost of moving food and essential goods across the state. The Thruway Authority raised tolls in 2024 and has another increase scheduled for 2027, both of which went through a public process. This surcharge did not. It bypassed the transparency with no opportunity for businesses, farmers, or communities to weigh in. What makes this especially frustrating is how it directly conflicts with Governor Hochul's efforts to support agriculture and affordability. In August, while announcing a new tax credit to support New York farmers, Hochul said, "Our farmers and farm workers are the backbone of New York, and I'm doing everything in my power to ensure that they can thrive." Not 6 months later, that work is set to be undone by increasing the cost of shipping those products. When transportation costs rise in secret, everyone pays. The Thruway should withdraw this surcharge, open a transparent public process, and focus on fixing the system we already pay for.
Our editorial cartoon today is about political elections, and it involves two people, a man and a woman on the left, dressed very nicely, and they both have on red, white, and blue buttons as they're kind of campaigning. The first one is a lady closest to us, and it says Crockett for Senate. And next to her is a gentleman, and his button says Newsom for President. And he is saying there's so much more that each of us would like to prove to the country. And they're speaking to a couple, a man and a woman, and as they say that, the woman responds by saying, "You mean besides the Peter Principle?" So something about their political system, I guess. Huh?
I guess so. Well, we'll turn now to the next page, which has the political opinion columns. And our first one comes from Noah Feldman, who writes for Bloomberg Opinion. And the headline here is, "Firing Immigration Judges Imperils More Than Meets the Eye." The Trump administration's latest outrage is firing immigration judges and replacing them with military lawyers. The move combines two of President Trump's signature initiatives. It's part of his war on immigrants and also part of his effort to make civil servants obey the administration's policies or be fired. To make sense of what's happening, let's start with the curious legal status of immigration judges. They aren't part of the federal judiciary established by Article 3 of the Constitution. Such judges have life tenure, and even the Trump administration hasn't claimed it can fire them. Rather, immigration judges are essentially civil servant lawyers who work for the Department of Justice. They fall under the Department of Justice's Executive Office for Immigration Review. Their job is to decide cases involving asylum, deportation, removal, and detention under the Immigration and Nationality Act. Once immigration judges have completed a 2-year probationary period, they're covered by the Civil Service Reform Act, which prohibits their dismissal for political reasons. The protection dates back to 1883 with the landmark Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act. Before the Civil Service reform, the president could fire all executive branch employees on the day he took office and replace them with patronage employees. Known as the spoil system, this way of doing things was grossly inefficient and invited widespread corruption. If any modern government innovation were thought to be impossible to overturn, it was civil service reform. Enter Trump 2.0. Since January, the Executive Office for Immigration Review has been firing immigration judges hired during the Biden administration who are within the 2-year probationary period, telling the judges who've just finished their 2 years that they won't be continuing, and firing judges who've completed their probationary period and thus still have full civil service protections. The scale of the firings appears unprecedented. At least 90 of 600 immigration judges have been fired this year, and the replacement of immigration judges by military lawyers certainly seems calculated to recruit judges who might be unsympathetic to migrants. The current Trump administration came into office believing that the Biden administration had tried to hire more liberal immigration judges. Andrew Arthur, a former immigration judge and fellow at the Center for Immigration Studies, pointed me to allegations that the previous administration had deliberately sought to change the composition of the immigration courts to be more pro-immigrant. Trump's desire to control the nonpartisan civil service dates back to the first day of the administration when he issued an executive order titled Restoring Accountability to Policy Influencing Positions Within the Federal Workforce. The order created the so-called Schedule F, designed to reclassify career civil servants as political employees. In at least one instance, the Justice Department told an administrative judge with the Merit Protection Board that a civil servant was removed from her position under Article 2 of the Constitution. Translated from legalese, this means likely the basis for firing the employee wasn't failure to perform her duties, but rather the president's inherent powers. The upshot is that it's becoming clear that immigration judges need stronger protection from the executive branch. In the end, both of Trump's objectives here, attacking immigrants and trying to bend civil servants to his will, need to be addressed by Congress. Existing law doesn't give lawyers enough ammunition to fight these battles to victory, and the Supreme Court's willingness to change constitutional precedent makes lawyers' efforts vulnerable. When the executive is overreaching and the Supreme Court is prepared to fold, the legislative branch is the best option we have.
Our next opinion piece comes to us from Fred Franson of the Tribune News Service. And the headline is, America Still Relies on the People's Collective Wisdom. One of the joys of living in flyover country is the annual state fair. It's a mix of traveling circus, amusement park, unbelievable food, live entertainment, and serious competitions. You see children and adults vying for prizes for raising livestock. You can watch everything from barrel racing to sheep shearing. And you can not only see the biggest watermelon, but also participate in watermelon seed spinning contest among other contests and games. And don't forget the famous butter cow. That is a life-size cow carved out of butter, if you're fortunate enough to attend the Iowa State Fair in Des Moines. One of my favorite stops at the State Fair is the Animal Barn. Go there and I promise you'll see a crowd around one pet in particular, the prize-winning largest hog. Winning the largest hog competition often requires a beast in excess of 1,200 pounds. The record holder, according to the Guinness World Book Records, was a pig named Big Bill, who weighed more than 2,550 pounds. In some fairs, however, the hog competition includes the spectators as well as the hogs. The challenge is to guess the weight. You would think that among state fair spectators and participants, there'd be quite a few ringers, hog farmers in particular, when it comes to guessing the weight of a gargantuan hog. There are, but they're not always winners. In the 2004 book, The Wisdom of the Crowd, subtitled Why the Many Are Smarter Than the Few and How Collective Wisdom Shapes Business, Economics, Society, and Nations, James Suronicki applied the wisdom of crowds to questions that go way beyond guessing porcine weight. For instance, the crowds he studied were able to identify the cause of the 1986 Challenger space shuttle disaster far faster than the so-called experts. And the wisdom of the crowd also explains why stock index funds generally outperform funds run by professional money managers over time. This phenomenon also forms one of the principal arguments for democracy. Collective decisions are generally better than those made by simply handing power over to the usually self-selected most qualified. This principle was famously articulated by the legendary journalist and author William F. Buckley Jr. when he quipped, "I am obliged to confess I should sooner live in a society governed by the first 2,000 names in Boston's telephone directory than a society governed by the 2,000 faculty members of Harvard University." Psychologist Barry Schwartz, in the 2004 book Paradox of Choice, reminds us that making choices is not always pleasant. There is a cost, he wrote, to things like having to pick among 20 brands of ketchup in the typical U.S. market. Making choices takes time and energy, and having to decide everything all the time can be a real burden. Today, we are seeing both phenomena in action. As the Democratic and Republican parties have become more dogmatic, a growing number of Americans are saying, "A plague on both your houses." In 2016, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump were viewed unfavorably by a majority of voters. In 2024, 26% of voters disliked both candidates. Choosing is especially unsatisfying when you don't like either option. The genius of the American system of government is that we have multiple checks on those in power. If the parties don't give us candidates we like, we rotate parties. Since Jimmy Carter, we have had a single party control the presidency and both houses of Congress in consecutive 2-year terms only once. That was with George W. Bush following 9/11. While Republicans have ridden a wave of euphoria over the last year, the recent off-year elections suggest the American people may be preparing to return to divided government in Washington. Combined with constitutional limitations on the government's overall powers, the president's specific powers, and court decisions reaffirming those limitations, this is how the American system is supposed to work. It's messy by design and requires frequent intervention by the people. The genius of the founders was to entrust our freedom to the collective wisdom of the people.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and the time is 33 minutes past the hour. And our next story is for all of us who like to eat out at restaurants, and the headline is, "Cost Keeps Buffalo's Restaurants from Michelin Star Honors." No restaurant in Buffalo has earned the highest culinary honor, a Michelin star. But that's because no restaurant in Buffalo is eligible for a Michelin star. The path to a Michelin star does not begin in the kitchen. It begins with a tourism board paying for the tire company turned world's chief food critic, Michelin, to visit its region. The bill for Michelin to come to Buffalo, $450,000, according to Patrick Kaler, who is president and CEO of Erie County's Tourism Board Visit Buffalo. A spokesman for the Michelin Guide did not confirm the fee because, quote, it cannot discuss commercial terms of its relationships for competitive reasons. Within the past few months, Michigan approached tourism consortium Great Lakes USA about expanding its coverage to multiple Great Lakes cities, including Buffalo, according to Kaler. Visit Buffalo is also evaluating the offer, Kaler said, which would involve paying Michelin $150,000 per year for 3 years. But Visit Buffalo is hesitant to make the investment without any guarantee of a local restaurant receiving Michelin honors. Michelin does not allow tourism groups to have any influence over its anonymous inspectors, restaurant selection, or awards. When you're making that kind of an investment, you would also like to have a fair bit of control. That's a lot of money just to put on a wish list and a prayer, Kaler said. We feel that there are definitely restaurants deserving across the board, whether it be fine dining, barbecue, whatever it might be considered, but we're not able to direct where that anonymous evaluator might go. Tourism departments also pay Michelin to visit their region. The funding covers some of the communication and marketing costs of establishing Michelin within a new area, according to a spokesman for the Michelin Guide. Visit Buffalo receives the bulk of its funding from Erie County's hotel and short-term rental tax. It is expected to spend about $5.6 million on sales, advertising, and marketing this year, according to its proposed budget, and that included a major rebrand and its first national marketing campaign.
Well, this next article is also on the front page, and it makes a lot of sense because it's about money and coins. The headline is, War of Wokeness Taking Aim at the U.S. Mint's Upcoming Coins. George Washington was there, and Benjamin Franklin, and even Abraham Lincoln, who joked that the last time he was in a theater, it didn't go so well. These paid reenactors and other dignitaries gathered on a recent evening in a Philadelphia auditorium for the unveiling of coins designed to celebrate the country's 250th anniversary. They provided a traditional, even simple take on the American journey with pilgrims and founding fathers and a stovepipe hat to the Gettysburg Address. Left unmentioned amid the event's fife and drum pageantry was that these coins also represented a rejection of a different set of designs meant to commemorate certain other inspiring chapters of the nation's history, including abolition, women's suffrage, and the civil rights movement. An event largely unnoticed by anyone other than coin enthusiasts then wound up reflecting the national struggle over how the American story is told, as the Trump administration seeks to frame any focus on the naughtier moments in the nation's arc as wokeness, Treasury Secretary Scott said. Bissett is often authorized by law to make final decisions about coin designs, including these 250th anniversary coins, a dime, a $50, and 5 quarters, which are both collectible and legal tender. But his choices ignored the more divisive recommendations for the quarters by the Citizens Coinage Advisory Committee, which is a bipartisan group mandated by Congress to review the U.S. Mint's proposed designs for American coins. To commemorate the abolition of slavery, the committee had recommended an image of Frederick Douglass on the obverse and shackled and unshackled hands on the reverse. To honor women's suffrage, a World War I era poster carrying a Votes for Women flag, and to evoke civil rights movement, a 6-year-old Ruby Bridges, book in hand, helping to desegregate the New Orleans school system in 1960. Bissett opted instead for the more general and much whiter. For the Mayflower Compact, a pilgrim couple staring into the distance. For the Revolutionary War, a profile of Washington. For the Declaration of Independence, a profile of Thomas Jefferson. For the Constitution, a profile of James Madison. And for the Gettysburg, a profile of Lincoln on the obverse and on the reverse, a pair of interlocking hands with no shackles. The rejection of its recommendations, along with the selection of designs it had not vetted, did not sit well with the committee, whose 11 members include numinalists, historians, and members of the public. None attended the event last Wednesday, which served as a table setter for another divisive numismatic matter, also unmentioned, the administration's plan to feature President Trump on a dollar coin.
Well, Ted, we had a moment ago an article about restaurants, and you just had an article about coins, and now we're going to combine the two in our next story, where the headline is Restaurants' New Dilemma, Less Beef at Higher Cost.
All right.
In early November, as Hall's Chop House was heading into the critical holiday season, its president, Tommy Hall, made a tough call. Prices at his steakhouse chain would go up. The price of a popular 8-ounce filet mignon rose to $61 from $57, a ribeye to $85 from $82. Beef prices have been climbing all years, and Hall's found itself in a code red, said Hall, who heads up Hall's Chop House, which is a family-owned business that has 5 steakhouses in the Southeast. We had to raise prices or we weren't going to be able to cover costs, he said. Every time we do a price increase, I have butterflies in my stomach, wondering how customers will take it. For steakhouses like Hall's, December is the biggest month of the year. It's when companies rent out private back rooms for lavish parties, corporate expense accounts cover 2 martini lunches, and families treat themselves to a night of steaks, bottles of Cabernet Sauvignon, and sides of creamed spinach, truffle mac, and cheese, and au gratin potatoes. But this holiday season, many steakhouses, from fine dining restaurants to mid-priced chains like Texas Roadhouse and Longhorn Steakhouse, are walking a tightrope. They have to balance raising menu prices enough to cover at least some of their expenses, but not so much that customers stop walking through the doors. With the nation's cattle inventory at its lowest level since the 1950s, ground beef, chuck roast, and steak have surged in prices over the past 2 years. Restaurants that specialize in steak are feeling the same sticker shock as consumers in grocery stores, as the price of a U.S. Department of Agriculture choice boneless steak has soared 20% in the past year to an average of $14.13 a pound. The steak hit a record high of $14.32 in August. How much restaurants can raise menu prices depends largely on who their customers are. Many fine dining steakhouses, which typically sell high grades of prime steak to high-income diners, say they're seeing little pushback as they price an 8-ounce filet mignon above $60. But when mid-priced chain Outback Steakhouse raised prices over the past couple of years, consumers balked. Traffic nosedived, it closed locations, and the stock of its parent company, Bloomin' Brands, plummeted nearly 47% in the past year. The question for Outback is, did they take too much price and that negatively impacted the guest experience, said Brian Vaccaro, a restaurant analyst at investment bank Raymond James.
Our next article is about the environment and how it's impacting people's lives in Louisiana. And the headline is Fighting for a Foothold. Sherry Mathern looked out Bayou Point aux Chiennes, wide enough for several boats to pass through. In the distance, a stand of dead trees marked where salt water comes and goes during storm-driven flooding. The bayou was once shallower and just wide enough for a small boat to pass. Land that cattle once roamed is submerged now, and elders tell stories of tree canopies once so lush they nearly shut out the day. Louisiana's coastline has steadily retreated for generations. As it does, the Pointe aux Chiennes Indian tribe and other indigenous people fight to protect what's left and to adapt to their changing environment. That includes a painstaking effort to build makeshift reefs that slow erosion and sturdier homes and buildings to better withstand these storms. We want to be able to make it so that people can stay here for as long as possible, for as long as they want to stay, said Mathern, who, as the tribe's director of daily operations, helped coordinate its response to the erosion threat. They hope to avoid the fate of the Jean Charles Choctaw Nation, a nearby tribe forced to move 3 years ago about 40 miles north of the encroaching Gulf of Mexico, Isle de Jean Charles, their island home southwest of New Orleans, which has now lost 98% of its land. Louisiana's coast retreated for several reasons. Levees along the Mississippi River severed the natural flow of land, creating sand, silt, and clay, starving wetlands of sediment they need to survive. Canals allowed the salt water to flow into wetlands, killing freshwater vegetation that holds them together and accelerates erosion. Groundwater pumping causes land to sink, and planet-warming emissions from burning coal, oil, and gas fuel, hurricanes, and sea levels rise. Since the 1930s, Louisiana lost about 2,000 square miles of land, sometimes fast, sometimes slow. A U.S. Geological Survey analysis found that when erosion was at its worst, a football field's worth of coastal wetlands disappeared every 34 minutes. It is a difficult problem to solve without being able to count on the Mississippi River to periodically drop sediment to maintain the land, said Sam Bentley, a geology professor at Louisiana State University. That's going to displace ecosystems. It's going to displace communities. It's going to isolate infrastructure that's along the coastline, Bentley said. And there are going to be a lot of changes that are very hard to deal with. Indigenous burial and cultural sites risk eroding, and traditional ways of life, like shrimping, fishing, and subsistence farming, are under pressure. Without action, researchers estimate the state could lose up to 3,000 square miles, an area larger than Delaware, over the next 50 years. Pointe-aux-Cheyennes elder Teresa Gardner said much has changed in the 5 decades that she's lived there. The pine behind her home got bigger, and she could identify Lake Cheyenne and Felicity. Now it's just one large body of water. People once hunted deer and walked through wooded areas. What hasn't changed is the quiet and close ties. Everybody knows everybody. People still fish like generations did before them. This is where our ancestors were, and we feel like we would be abandoning them to leave, Daughter said. We have sacred sites that we still visit. By slowing erosion and building more homes, the tribe hopes younger families will move to Pointe-aux-Cheyennes. It also knows that protecting its lands from going underwater will protect regions further inland. As Dardar put it, we are the buffer.
As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. We have one local death listing. Patricia Corky Farrow, nee Hayek, passed away on December 11th, and friends and relatives may visit the Lombardo Funeral Home, the North Towns Chapel, at 885 Niagara Falls Boulevard, that's near Eggert and Sheridan, on Friday from 2 until 8 o'clock. And we have one national death listing, Joanne Allen Boyce, age 84, who braved mobs in integrating a school. She was one of the first black students to desegregate a public high school in the South as part of the Clinton 12. She passed away on December 3rd at her home in Los Angeles. She was 84. She was a 14-year-old in Clinton, a small city near Knoxville, when she and others were thrust into the early stages of the struggle that was to rip apart the South for the next year and next 15 years as schools were integrated. Again, if you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. That is 716-821-5555.
And now it's time to take a look at our horoscope for today. And if today is your birthday, Monday, December 15th, you are a take-charge ambitious person who is a natural leader. This year is the last year of a 9-year cycle, which means it's time to let go of people, places, and things from the past that held you back. Stars tell you what kind of day you're going to have. 5 dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, and 1 a difficult day. And we'll start with Aries. It's a 3-star day. Today, your ruler Mars has moved to the top of your chart, arousing your ambition, which could create conflict with authority figures. Don't be surprised if emotions are intense. Tonight, check your finances. Taurus, 4 stars. The moon is opposite your sign today, which happens for 2.5 days every month. When this occurs, it means you have to be accommodating and compromise a bit with someone else. Tonight, listen. Gemini, 3 stars. You have to put your needs second to the demands of someone else today. You're not being a martyr, you're stepping up to the plate. Commendable. Tonight, work. Cancer, 4 stars. It's Monday and today's a mixed bag. The moon makes you feel protective, nurturing, and affectionate to others. This is good. Tonight, play. Leo, 3 stars. You have mixed messages today. In one way, you want to relax at home. Might want to play hooky and have some fun. Nevertheless, today Mars has moved into business-minded Capricorn. Tonight, cocoon. Virgo, 4 stars. You want to talk to somebody today. You have something to say. Yes, you're involved with family discussions and home repairs. Tonight, conversations. Libra, 3 stars. For the next 6 weeks, Mars will move across the bottom of your chart, creating more activity where you live. You'll work hard to get things done, but tension with family might arise. Tonight, maintain your belongings. Scorpio, 4 stars. Today the moon is in your sign, heightening your emotions. However, when the moon is in your sign, things tend to go your way. Tonight, you're in charge. Sagittarius, 3 stars. All hail Sagittarius. The Sun, Mercury, and Venus are in your sign. Today, however, you want to be low-key and enjoy some privacy. Tonight, enjoy that privacy. Capricorn, 4 stars. Ta-da! Today, fiery Mars moves into your sign for the first time since January and February of 2024. The next 6 weeks will be a time of great activity. Tonight, be friendly. Aquarius, 3 stars. People notice you today. Some will know your personal details about your private life. This continues to be a popular, friendly time for you. Tonight, you're admired. And finally, Pisces is a 4-star day. It's Monday, and you want to get out of Dodge, or at least explore your own neighborhood. Tonight, broaden your horizons.
Well, next we'll take a look back at today in history. And on this date in 1791, the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution, went into effect following ratification by Virginia. In 1890, Hunkapapa Lakota chief Sitting Bull and 11 other tribe members were killed in Grand River, South Dakota during a confrontation with Indian Agency police. In 1939, the Civil War motion picture epic Gone with the Wind, starring Vivian Leigh and Clark Gable, had its world premiere in Atlanta. In 1944, a single-engine plane carrying band leader Glenn Miller, a major in the U.S. Army Air Forces, disappeared over the English Channel. In 1967, the Silver Bridge between Gallipolis, Ohio and Point Pleasant, West Virginia collapsed into the Ohio River, killing 46 people. In 2011, the flag used by U.S. forces in Iraq was lowered in a Baghdad airport ceremony marking the formal end of the American military mission in that country. The war left 110,000 Iraqis and 4,500 Americans dead. In 2013, Nelson Mandela was laid to rest in a state funeral, ending a 10-day mourning period for South Africa's first black president. Mandela died on December 5th of that year at age 95. And lastly, in 2016, a federal jury in Charleston, South Carolina, convicted Dylann Roof of the racist killings of 9 black church members.
And normally we like to have a little quote for the day here, something to make us, ponder about what's going on in life. And, after the Bills have been playing these second half cardiac kids, coming back from behind, they still remain very, very favorable in that hunt for the Lombardi Trophy and the Super Bowl this year. And so our quote today comes from good old Vince Lombardi, who said, "The only place success comes before work is in the dictionary." And it certainly appears that the Bills have 2 different work ethics in the first half and the second half, and we're certainly seeing the different results.
Well, I think Vince Lombardi also said winning isn't everything, it's the only thing.
Yeah.
And I guess after the way the Bills have played the past couple of weeks here, it's the final score that matters.
Yes, it is.
I think Josh Allen made the point that it may look ugly or look bad, but, as long as you score more points than the other guy, I guess that's what matters most.
The most important thing is getting that W.
Yes, it is. Well, on to next week in the Cleveland Browns.
Yes.
You're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for Victory Monday, December 15th on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
Ted Pajacki.
And I'm Ed Howard, and we'll be back after a short break.
Are you facing challenges with vision loss and need help with your smartphone, sending emails, navigating the internet, and staying connected with your family? VIA, Visually Impaired Advancement, is offering free classes for seniors weekly at multiple locations with free assistance for your smartphone, email, and internet skills. There's a new session every week, and it rotates between the South Towns and the North Towns. It's at your local Erie County libraries and at 10 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. For more information, call Elhana Porter at 716-888-4632. Again, that's 716-888-4632.
We will continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers today are
Ed Howard
and Ted Pajacki. And we move now to the city and regional news. And our first article is headline, Performance Gap Between Suburbs Cities Still Persists. If you know the socioeconomic strength of residents in a school district in Western New York, you can likely estimate its proficiency rates on state tests. Results released late last week by the New York State Education Department continue to illustrate the academic performance gap between wealthy suburbs and poor cities. All results for the test taken by 3rd through 8th graders in spring of 2025 are available for the department's data site. For reference, the state's overall proficiency is 53% for the English language arts and 57% for math. The halves are Clarence at 72% for English language arts, 76% math. Williamsville, 72 for English language, 79 for math. Orchard Park, 63% English language, 72% math. The have-nots, Buffalo Public Schools, 28% for English language arts, 26% for math. Lackawanna, 19% English language, 22% math. Niagara Falls, 31% English language, 32% math. Affluence is evident in regional results too. Buffalo, at about 40%, has one of the highest child poverty rates in the country, but it lags behind Rochester and Syracuse, whose rates are typically a couple of ticks higher. The scores follow suit. Rochester City Schools had a 19% proficiency in English language arts and 17% in math, while Syracuse had 24% in English and 20% in math. The real purpose and benefit of the assessments is not public comparison, which is increasingly trivial when the state discourages year-over-year comparisons anyway due to test tinkering. Instead, when districts receive student scores in the late summer, they can identify students in levels 1 and 2, the lowest performers, and immediately supply them with academic interventions to help boost their scores on the next exam. The public release makes virtually no waves inside school districts, which are only a few months away from the next exams. Results can also help administrators evaluate curriculum decisions. In Buffalo, Chief Academic Officer Ann Botticelli said a few times over the past year that the district could see a small dip in state math scores as teachers and students adjust to a new program called Reveal Math. From the spring's test, Buffalo's improved by a percentage point over its prior year proficiency, but Botticelli anticipates a greater leap in the spring 2026 exams because teachers and students have greater confidence in how Reveal works.
Our next local story is headlined, No New Murder Trial Despite Racist Statement from a Juror. The state's top court has rejected a Buffalo man's bid for a new trial in a case involving a claim a juror said during deliberations that, quote, all black people look the same in the dark, close quote. Allegations of bigotry were made by a black female juror in a 2018 Buffalo murder trial in which all the other jurors were white. The Court of Appeals on November 25th ruled 6-1 that an Erie County Court judge did not abuse his discretion when he rejected a mistrial request from Jalen A. Wiggins' defense attorney. The ruling comes despite the assertion by the juror who raised the issue of her fellow jurors' behavior, who said about half the jurors expressed racial bigotry during deliberations. The court majority ruled that the trial judge, County Judge Michael F. Petrushka, reasonably concluded on his record that what the juror perceived as a racial bias was in fact a discussion about the identification evidence, some of which may have been misinterpreted. The mere fact that race entered the jury's deliberations does not establish that racial bias infected their verdict, the court majority said in its opinion last month. Jurors discussing identification evidence, particularly the difficulty of identifying individuals in nighttime, black and white video footage may necessarily touch on physical characteristics, including race, without harboring or expressing racial animus. The court's lone dissenter opined that the trial judge should have declared a mistrial, which she described as, quote, the only proper course of action. We cannot have confidence that the defendant received a fair trial where approximately half of the jurors' impartiality was directly placed into question, Justice Jenny Rivera wrote. At about 1:08 a.m. on August 4, 2016, a man was shot on Maple Street between Virginia and Carlton Streets in the city's Fruit Belt neighborhood. About an hour later, in the Broadway Fillmore neighborhood, a man was fatally shot and 2 men were injured in a shooting on Sherman Street. A jury concluded Wiggins, who is black, pulled the trigger at both scenes, the latter of which was a birthday party. After his first trial ended in a mistrial in March of 2018, another jury convicted Wiggins the following month of murdering Lerone Watkins, 21, as well as on assault and weapons charges. He was acquitted of 3 attempted murder charges levied in the 2 shootings. Wiggins, who was 19 at the time of the crimes, was out on bail on a robbery charge at the time of the shootings. The clothing of the shooter, who was captured on video, played a key role in identifying the suspect. The Court of Appeals majority said the shooter in the case wore distinctive clothing, which prosecutors at trial described as a beige patterned shirt made by Burberry and white pants. On Monday, April 23, 2018, the second day of deliberations at the retrial, the court received a note from juror number 5, a 65-year-old black woman, the only person of color on the jury. She wanted to rewatch the video from the Sherman Street shooting, but the other jurors were apparently resistant. I was told the video would not show anything better, juror number 5 wrote. I was told on Friday that all black people look the same in the dark. That's insulting to me. I do not want to be bullied into rushing my decision.
And next we have an essay from My View by local writer Sister Louise Alf of the St. Francis of Newman Communities as she reflects on the stars of the season. And it's entitled, Stars of Wonder, Stars of Light. Since the beginning of time, people have been drawn to the stars in the firmament. Who of us hasn't looked up to try to locate the Big Dipper or marveled at a shooting star? Countless songs have played in our heads about stars, from Perry Como, who invites us to catch a falling star and save it for a raining day, to Starlight by Taylor Swift, who captures the essence of youthful romance. We pray about the stars. Psalm 147 says God determines the number of and calls each of them by name. Stars have many disciples. Harriet Truman used stars to bring people to freedom. Sailors use stars to navigate the seas. Astrologers use stars to study the universe. Seekers use stars to understand the meaning of life. St. Francis of Assisi used stars to glorify God. Religions use stars to express their identity. The 6-pointed Star of David is the symbol of the Jewish identity. The Muslim faith embraces the symbol of the star with the crescent moon. And at Christmas time, Christians top off their trees with a star. Stars hold a special place in the Bible, serving as powerful symbols of God's majesty and guidance. The most famous stargazers at this time of the year are found in the infancy narratives of St. Matthew's Gospel. Depending on the biblical translation, they are called kings, magi's, or astrologers. There is no indication they were only 3, nor does it indicate they were only men. But Scripture does tell us that they were seeking a king and desired to pay him homage. Their search would be rewarded with encountering a divine Messiah. They would discover true freedom is found there, where direction and wisdom are given and where the hungers of the heart are rooted. 2,000 years later, like those biblical seekers. I, too, follow the stars, seeking the same desires. I desire freedom from the shackles of egotism and pride, and freedom for those imprisoned by discrimination or ravaged by war. I follow the star to find the source of truth, since I know how easily I can fall into the web of confusing doctrinal opinions. I follow the star to learn from the humble Messiah who deigned to be born in poverty, become a political refugee, model a new way of living, and be unjustly condemned to death. If you read the story of the 3 stargazers in Bethlehem, you will see that after the visitors presented their gifts, Scripture says they returned home by a different route. No surprise there. I doubt if I or anyone can go home the same way we came after we had a divine encounter that profoundly touches our life. I think Madonna, in her song Lucky Star, sums up my musings on stars. Quote, "You must be my lucky star, 'cause you made the darkness seem so far, and when I'm lost she'll be my guide. I just turn around and you're at my side." I follow the star because it leads me to Jesus, who then guides me to greater holiness. My wish for all those reading this article comes from a famous Christmas carol. "O star of wonder, star of night, star with royal beauty bright, westward leading, still proceeding, guide us to thy perfect light." So whatever star you follow or hang on your prayer, may it guide you through this coming new year.
Well, talking about stars of a different sort, next we have Alan Pergament's column, and it deals with Danny Nevereth and Dave Thomas productions that have a heavy dose of nostalgia. I thought of advertising man Don Draper while watching a couple of nostalgic productions featuring legendary disc jockey Danny Nevereth and former Rocket Ship 7 and Dialing for Dollars host Dave Thomas. "Nostalgia, it's delicate but potent," said Draper in one of the series' most famous quotes. "Teddy told me that in Greek, nostalgia literally means the pain from an old wound. It's a twinge in your heart, more powerful than memory alone." The memories come alive in a documentary, The Kid from Keppel Street, which focuses on Nevereth's career and his career choices. The 45-minute documentary is produced by Ron Shane, who worked in local radio and was a photographer and editor at WGRZ-TV, and has known Nevereth since 1971, and produces Nevereth scripts and posts them on Facebook. Shane's been working for 2 years on a documentary which airs on WBBZ-TV in 2 parts, the first at 8 o'clock tonight and part 2 at 8 o'clock on December 22nd. There will also be encore shows at 4 and 5 p.m. on December 27th. The silver-haired Nevereth sits for an extended interview in which he recalls his radio journey that began as a teenager in South Buffalo. At times, it plays like a history of local radio, as Nevereth describes all the stations in a career that began in Coudersport, PA, before he became an institution working at WBNY AM, WKBW AM twice, WGR, and WHTT. The amusing stories include Nevereth explaining he would answer Syracuse when asked where he attended school. That led people to think he went to Syracuse University. He attended the Curran School of Broadcasting in Syracuse and never set foot on the SU campus. He wasn't lying. He would just let people assume what they wanted to assume. Now 87, he still tells stories with an impish charm of a guy who recoiled at the idea of being told to just give the time or temperature on one of his first radio stops rather than doing entertaining bits and telling stories. And he has several good stories to tell. He recalls putting his foot in his mouth when he asked a Polish cleaning lady, who became a character on his morning show, where she'd been for a few weeks. She then revealed on the air that her husband had died. In a word, awkward. The Thomas documentary covers some of the same territory as the Nevereth special. The documentary, produced by Toronto TV critic and podcast host Bill Brieux, is available by searching for Blast Off Back to the 60s on Rocket Ship 7 on YouTube or watching on the website Brieux, Brioux TV. Thomas, whose real name is David Boreanaz, is the father of actor Bones, Angel, and SEAL Team 7 of the same name. He moved from Buffalo to WPVI TV in Philadelphia as a popular weatherman. Nevereth replaced him as Channel 7's noontime weatherman. Thomas explains in a Zoom interview with Brieux that he was forced to change his on-air name in Buffalo because a TV executive felt it was too long. The change didn't go over well with one Buffalo businessman who unjustifiably felt Thomas's name change meant that Boreanaz was ashamed of his roots.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes after the hour, and now we turn to the glorious section of the news, the sports section. And as you turn to the section, the giant headline across the whole page, Alive and Well. And our first insight into yesterday's game comes to us from Jay Skersey of the Buffalo News, and its headline is, Allen's heroics are too much for the Pats to stomach. Josh Allen left it all on the field Sunday. Literally. Television cameras captured Allen throwing up on the sideline during the Bills' remarkable 35-31 victory over the New England Patriots. In the end, though, it was the Patriots and their fans who were feeling sick to their stomach after Allen directed a 21-point comeback, the largest by a visiting team in the history of Gillette Stadium, in Buffalo's thrilling win. Allen finished 19 of 28 for 193 yards and 3 touchdown passes, and also rushed 11 times for 48 yards. In a season of comebacks, this was the most impressive yet. The Patriots had a chance to clinch the AFC East title, ending the Bills' 5-year run atop the division. The celebration will have to wait, however. Buffalo's hopes of winning a 6th straight title are still very faint. But in overcoming a 24-7 halftime deficit, the Bills sent a message to the rest of the AFC. That message? With number 17, the game is never over. Nothing really shocks me anymore, Bills right tackle Spencer Brown said. I've seen it all. Him puking is kind of a good sign for us. It's like, all right, this guy is emptying the tank. He's putting it all out there for us. We love him. Allen led the offense to 28 points in the second half, outperforming young Patriot quarterback Drake May as the Bills won their 3rd straight game to improve to 10-4 on the season and to move a step closer to earning a spot in the AFC playoff field. It's the most important one because it's the next one, he said. I say that a lot. It's no different. We understood what was at stake. But at the same time, that wasn't really in the back of our heads. We were just saying, hey, we've got to find a way to win the football game. They did so again, thanks in large part to their quarterback's brilliance. Allen downplayed having gotten sick on the field, something he said happens to him before every game. If I don't get enough out pregame, it usually happens at halftime, he said. If I don't get enough at halftime, it usually happens in the 3rd or 4th quarter. I just don't know why I do it. It just happens. It's due to nothing else than just like a weird feeling. Just got to get it out. The Bills' defense has allowed 31 or more points in 4 games this season. The team's record in those 4 games is 4-0. The Patriots had won 120 straight games when leading by at least 17 points. But the Bills ended that streak with a 21-point comeback win that tied the franchise record for the largest on the road, also accomplished November 21st, 2010 at Cincinnati and October 25th, 1978 at Miami. We're into our own journey, Bills coach Sean McDermott said. We have a lot of respect for them. Their coaches do a great job. We came, wanted to play as good as we could, and get a win. And we did.
They certainly did. But, according to Lance Lasowski in his column, winning it all is possible, but the D needs to improve. Joey Bosa needed a moment at his locker stall to find the words to best describe the thrilling and painstaking events that unfolded Sunday as snow fell at Gillette Stadium. In 10 years to begin his NFL career, Bosa never witnessed anything like his 14 games as an edge rusher for the Buffalo Bills. For the third time this season, they scored at least 28 points in the second half, and during each of those games, the Bills' defense endured a horrible start that forced the team to rally from a multi-touchdown deficit. I don't know, Bosa pondered, his eyes wide while contemplating how the Bills managed to rally from 21 points down to beat the New England Patriots. This team, we don't quit. We know it's never over. As long as we have Josh Allen back there, anything is possible. Too often this season, the Bills have put that widely accepted theory to the test, and if they're going to play in February, the defense needs to fix the weaknesses that opponents have exploited for much of this season. Allen has come through with a remarkable performance to bail out Buffalo in some of those games, but it's not a sustainable path to winning the Super Bowl. He was at the height of his powers on Sunday when the Patriots would have ripped the AFC East title away from Buffalo with a win. The reigning MVP led Buffalo on 5 consecutive scoring drives, completing 19 of 28 passes for 193 yards and 3 touchdowns. There's no panic, said Bills edge rusher Greg Rousseau. We didn't make a big deal out of it when it was 21-0. We knew to just keep playing. The things can change real quick. We need to be better for sure, acknowledged Bills coach Sean McDermott. The Bills have allowed 23 rushing touchdowns, the highest single-season mark since McDermott became coach in 2017, and their inability to consistently stop the run has made it more challenging to contain talented quarterbacks like the Patriots' Drake May.
And we return back to Jay Skursky, who has 5 observations on yesterday's game. The first, Sean McDermott had a tough half. The Patriots went on an 8-play, 73-yard drive on their very first possession to open up with a 7-0 lead. The key play was a 3rd and 7 completion, in quotes, from May to Keyshawn Boutte for 30 yards that moved the ball to the Bills' 25-yard line. The reason there's quotation marks around completion is the replay showed the ball making contact with the ground. McDermott, however, did not throw his challenge flag. We didn't have anything, he said. We didn't have a replay quick enough for us to do it. What I saw on this video board, it was close. You never know. So we just didn't have any replay, and they got up to the ball real fast. The counterpoint to McDermott's position, at worst, the Bills would have lost a timeout. Given how big of a play it was, even if it was on the first drive of the game, the challenge might have been worth it. On Buffalo's first possession, the offense moved the ball to the New England 44-yard line where it faced 4th and 5. McDermott elected to punt. It was a weak call. Analytics models that track whether a coach should go for it were strongly in favor of it. McDermott's decision decreased the Bills' win probability by 3.4%. His second observation, Ray Davis provided a spark. This hasn't been the type of season Davis was expecting, but the second-year running back from Kentucky has managed to carve out a role on special teams as a kick returner. He came into this game averaging 30.6 yards on 19 kickoff returns. He improved that average against the Patriots with 4 kick returns for 164 yards, an average of 41.0 yards per attempt. Davis's long return was 58 yards, providing the Bills' offense with quality field position. I'm not getting a lot of opportunities on offense, so I have shifted my focus to my mindset to going out there and being the best player I can be, no matter where that is, Davis said. When you've got an all-pro running back ahead of you, there's not much you can do but just watch his greatness, and I'm just continuing to learn. Davis now leads the NFL with an average of 32.4 yards on his 23 kickoff returns. He added one catch for 13 yards on offense. The third observation is Dawson Knox had a great week. The tight end and his wife welcomed the birth of their daughter Noah on Tuesday. On Sunday, he had 3 catches for 37 yards and 2 touchdowns, the third game of his career with 2 receiving touchdowns. Probably top 2 greatest weeks of my life, Knox said after the game. Married my wife, and 1 week we just had welcoming our girl into the world. It's a feeling like any other. I'm so excited to get back home. Knox has now had at least 3 catches in 4 straight games, steadily becoming a larger part of this offense. And fourth, Maxwell Hairston got the start. Against the Patriots, the Bills had to play without number 1 cornerback Christian Benford, who had suffered a toe injury during Thursday's practice. He did not practice Friday and was listed as questionable on the final injury report. In his place, the Bills turned to Hairston, their first-round draft pick, who made his second start. Hairston was in coverage on Boots' catch in the first quarter. The rookie was in good position, but couldn't quite make the play. He finished the game with 6 tackles. Just go out there and let it rip, veteran quarterback Tre'Davious White said, who played opposite Hairston. Don't care about mistakes. You've got a lot of guys, a lot of vets out here that'll take care of you. You're not out here alone. He knows that. As a young defensive back in this league, I've been through it all. Everybody's been through it. You know what? That's what he's doing. He's doing a great job. And finally, the fifth was that Gabe Davis was a healthy scratch. The Bills made a surprising move at wide receiver, choosing to make Gabe Davis a healthy inactive to make room for Joshua Palmer's return to the lineup. That came a week after Davis had led all wide receivers in playing time, with 37 snaps against the Bengals, 58% of the offensive total. Davis led the Bills receivers in that game with 2 catches for 21 yards. Those aren't exactly overwhelming totals, but it's still a surprise the Bills chose to sit him, especially considering the trust that Allen has in him. Palmer, who had missed the past 2 games and 5 of the past 7 with an ankle injury, which he originally suffered in Week 6 against Atlanta, finished with 1 catch on 2 targets for 16 yards. He also committed a false start that pushed the Bills into a 3rd and 9 on their second series of plays.
Well, while we're glad the Bills won today, the Sabres are also winning.
Wow.
Thompson's goal helps Buffalo beat Seattle and finish their road trip with 3 straight wins. The Buffalo Sabres closed their longest trip of the season on a high note by completing a 3-1 win against the Seattle Kraken on Sunday at Climate Pledge Arena. Tage Thompson scored his 4th goal in as many games, and Alex Tuch had 2 assists after missing Thursday game at Vancouver due to illness, and both helped the Sabres, 14-14-4, close the road trip by climbing back to .500. Thompson leads the Sabres with 29 points, 16 goals and 13 assists, now has 8 points in the last 7 games, 4 goals and 4 assists, dating back to December 1st, and has scored goals in the Sabres' last 4 games. The Sabres finished the 6-game road trip 3-3 after notching wins at Edmonton, Vancouver, and Seattle in the last 6 nights. They lost games in Philadelphia, Winnipeg, and Calgary, and are now 5-9-2 on the road. The Sabres also completed their first 3-game win streak of the season. Thompson was measured but realistic in regard to the outcome of the 6-game road trip. Finishing .500, not great, and obviously we want to be better than that, said Thompson, who scored the go-ahead goal at 10:08 of the second and broke the 1-1 tie. But it could have easily gone bad the way we started. very resilient by our group to find it and turn it around. It's not easy going on the road, especially when you start a trip off 0-3. A great job by just mentally not letting that get to us and focusing on each day.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 30 minutes after the hour. And it's like everybody's making decisions here. Quarterbacks have to make decisions, coaches. Well, let's ask Eric about the human condition. Today, Asking Eric has this headline: Siblings want to involve grieving sister in a holiday tradition. Dear Eric, my oldest sister recently lost her husband of 40 years. He had health issues, but his death 6 months ago was unexpected. They had no children. They moved away from our hometown many years ago and made a very happy life together. My other siblings and I still live in our hometown and have always gathered on Christmas Eve with our families. We would love our sister to come home to be with the family this year, as it will be the first Christmas our sister will be alone. However, she's resistant. She is not used to traveling, especially during the busy holiday season, and it's not altogether comfortable navigating the airport, although the airport in her city is very efficient and signage makes navigation easy. It's a brief flight from her city to our hometown. I'm torn between respecting her feelings of discomfort and being heartbroken at the thought of her spending Christmas alone. She does have many friends, but I don't know if any of them might extend an invitation to her to join their celebration. Yes, we have considered flying to her city to be with her, but then we sacrifice our Christmas Eve tradition with our own families. Is that selfish? We just want to do the right thing, and I need some perspective. And it's signed Family Conundrum. And Eric replies, Dear Conundrum, though this will be published quite close to the holiday, I hope it's not too late to include your sister in your plans. Travel to her, full stop. Traditions are important, but they're only as meaningful as the people who participate. So your tradition can withstand switching or splitting into separate events for a year or a couple of years. Surely, it's not feasible for everyone to pick up their families and go visit your sister, but if one or two of you can see her this year, think of how impactful that might be. Another option is to preserve the Christmas Eve tradition and fly to see her afterward, thereby creating a new tradition. The most important thing is that the tradition continues to serve the needs of the people who uphold it. If it doesn't, it's time to change. Ask her what would be helpful and make your plan together. Our next letter, Dear Eric. I've been friends with Mikey since we were about 9 years old. We're now 61. We grew up in the same neighborhood as kids and have moved around, but still live in the same small town. Over the years, I've noticed the only time I'd see Mikey was when I drive to his house or see him at a local flea market. I've asked him to have lunch, go fishing, or hang out with me. There was always some excuse as to why he couldn't make it. I purposely stepped back from going to see him, and it was over a year before he reached out via text to ask why he hadn't seen me. So I replied via text and stated that the above, and that I was hoping for more from what I viewed as a one-sided friendship. I also stated how difficult this was to write, that I thought about him often, loved him, and that he'd always been my friend. It's over a week, and I've received no reply. I don't know what to make of this. Any insight would be greatly appreciated. And it's signed, Missing My Friend. And Eric replies, Dear friend, good for you for asking for what you need. So often in friendships and other relationships, we fear that talking about what isn't working or making respectful asks for change will repel people, when in reality it makes space for a closer bond. I know it doesn't seem like it in the case of your friendship with Mikey, but by pointing out that something isn't working for you, you've made fixing it easier. Mikey has to participate too, though. It's possible that he saw your friendship differently. Maybe he's more of a homebody and declined invitations to hang out because of social discomfort. And maybe he'd grown uncomfortable with the pattern of you reaching out and feel surprised at your response. It's not for me to say, and feelings are his responsibility to negotiate. One of the benefits of friendship, of course, is that he could share them with you. If you miss him and you want to keep the connection going, you may have to continue talking on more responsibility in the friendship. Try reaching out by phone. Ask if he'll let you come over. Start the conversation from a neutral, open place. You value your friendship and you want to feel valued. Hearing it rather than reading it may help the message come across more clearly. Then you and Mikey can start again.
Well, now for something completely different. And the headline on this article is Generating Laughs. Can artificial intelligence ever be funny? Some comedians embrace the tools, but they're still running the show. A baby and his family dog sit across from each other in a podcast studio. Welcome to the Talking Baby Podcast, says the infant, wearing headphones and sounding like a deep-voiced radio broadcaster. On today's episode, we'll be talking to the weird-looking person who lives at my house. So begins a series of humorous interactions between two characters animated by artificial intelligence that's attracted millions of views on social media. They're a nod to the 1989 movie Look Who's Talking, but produced in a matter of hours and without a multi-million-dollar Hollywood budget. Artificial intelligence helped to do all of that, but it didn't craft the punchlines. It's a relief to comedian Jon Lajoie, who made the videos, that AI chatbots aren't inherently funny. It can't write comedy, Lajoie said. It can't do any of that. So for now at least, AI won't take his job. Lajoie's viral videos have gained him attention as an artificial intelligence adopting entertainer, a reputation that he's not entirely comfortable with as he grapples with what all this means for the future of this very human craft of making people laugh. King Wallonius is not feeling so cautious. His first big hit was an AI-generated song called BBL Drizzy that made fun of the rapper Drake during the height of his feud with Kendrick Lamar. He's since moved to making AI video parodies like I'm McLovin' It, a Popeyes diss song, and I Want My Barrel Back, which is a Cracker Barrel song. It's very similar to someone who's writing for The Onion or Saturday Night Live, Wallonius said. I try to find out, okay, what's my comedic angle on this particular topic, and then I'll generate a video from that. He starts with writing his own notes on an idea, then refines it with a chatbot, puts that language known as a prompt into AI tools that can generate imagery, video, music, and voices. But he wouldn't ask it for a joke. Wallonius says most chatbot-generated comedy lacks the nuances or complexity that it takes for jokes to really land. A scholar of comedy, Michelle Robinson, said, "A lot of the stuff that I've seen AI produce is corny as hell. It does seem fluent in the basic grammar of jokes, but sometimes they're slightly off," said Robinson, a professor of American Studies at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. They may be moderately funny, but I think they're really missing an important element that makes us laugh. What are they missing? She's not totally sure, except that most good jokes are a little edgy or dangerous, and chatbots can't seem to calibrate whatever provocation is in the joke to the moment that we're living in. Caleb Warren, a professor who studies marketing and consumer psychology at the University of Arizona, said that leaves comedy writers with an opportunity to make use of tools that can't completely outsource their skills. The ideas that are driving the humor are coming from the human comedian, but the AI tools can help them execute and illustrate them, Warren said. Polonius was a struggling comedian and screenwriter who began experimenting with AI during Hollywood's actor and writer strikes in 2023. I leaned all the way into artificial intelligence because I didn't know what else to do with my free time, he said. I was doing everything I could to try to break into Hollywood. And once the writer's strike happened, that kind of shut that down. I started to learn these AI tools and get really good at them and started to cultivate an audience. And while Polonius saw an opening, the rise of generative AI stroked division and posed challenges to other professional comedians. Sarah Silverman joined book authors in suing a chatbot maker, alleging that they infringed on the copyright of her The Bedwetter memoir. The daughter of the late Robin Williams called it gross and maddening when users of OpenAI's AI video generator, Sora, conjured up a realistic deepfakes of the beloved actor to churn out what she described as horrible TikTok slop puppeteering. You're not making art, you're making disgusting, overprocessed hot dogs out of the lives of human beings, out of the history of art and music, and then shoving them down someone else's throat, hoping they'll give you a little thumbs up and like it, Zelda Williams wrote in October.
In news from around the nation and the world, we have some news from the Federal Reserve. The headline is, Trump Influence Rejected. The possible new chair says that the president would have no weight on the panel. A leading candidate to be President Donald Trump's choice for Federal Reserve chair said that he would present the president's views to the Fed officials for their consideration, but they could reject them if they chose when they were making decision on interest rates. Kevin Hassett, in an interview Sunday on CBS's News Face the Nation, said he would continue to speak with Trump if he becomes the Fed chair. But when asked if Trump's opinions on interest rates would have equal weight with members of the Fed's interest rate setting committee, Hassett replied, no, he would have no weight. His opinion matters if it's good, if it's based on data, Hassett continued. And then, if you go to the committee and you say, well, the president made this argument, and that's a really sound argument, I think, what do you think? If they reject it, then they'll vote in a different way. Hassett's comments come as Trump is reportedly in final interviews with potential replacements for the Fed's current chair, Jerome Powell. Trump has emphasized that he expects whomever he nominates to lead the Fed will sharply lower the central bank's key rate, which currently stands at about 3.6%. Trump has said it should be cut to 1% or lower, a view almost no economist shares. Trump's outspokenness has raised concerns about the Fed's independence from day-to-day politics under any chair he appoints. Until Trump's first election in 2016, presidents of both parties for several decades avoided commenting publicly on Fed decisions, and usually refrained from doing so privately as well. Economists generally believe that a politically independent Fed is better at combating inflation because it can take the unpopular steps to keep prices down, such as raise interest rates. On Friday, however, Trump said that he, quote, certainly should have a role in talking to whoever the head of the Fed is, end quote, about rates. I've done great. I've made a lot of money. I'm very successful, he said. I think my voice should be heard. The Wall Street Journal reported Friday that Kevin Warsh, a fellow at the right-leaning Hoover Institution and former Fed governor, is Trump's current favorite to replace Powell, whose term ends next May. But Trump previously hinted that he would pick Hassett. "I think the two Kevins are great," Trump told the Journal. Hassett, for his part on Sunday, said that in the end, the job of the Fed is to be independent. "In the end, it's a committee that votes," he said, "and I'd be happy to talk to the president every day until both of us are dead, because it's so much fun."
Well, here's a disappointing story coming out of the fires in California last year, and the headline is, "California Fires Latest Victim, a 97-year-old newspaper." There was a report on page 2 about a burglary on Marquez Avenue where 2 paintings were stolen from a home. On page 3, an announcement about community cleanup events planned for the weekend could be found. And on page 4, there was an obituary for a longtime resident who lost her home in the Los Angeles fires. Few news outlets covered the mundane and the momentous events like in the Pacific Palisades, like the twice-monthly Palisadian Post. After a 97-year run, Thursday's copy of the paper, on sale at newsstands for $1.50, was the last regular edition. The closing of the publication, which will also no longer appear online, comes nearly a year after the Palisades fire burned more than 23,000 acres of Pacific Palisades, killed 12 people, and destroyed more than 6,800 structures. Thousands of residents whose homes were destroyed or damaged were displaced after the fire, and many remain in limbo as they assess whether to rebuild in the Palisades or move elsewhere. For some residents, the Palasadian Post was one of several community touchstones, along with Palisades Charter High School and Corpus Christi Catholic Church, that gave the neighborhood a Mayberry feel. Although it is within the Los Angeles city limits, some residents have said they like the cozy nature of Pacific Palisades with its own paper, youth baseball league, and 4th of July parade. In an article that ran across 5 columns on the front page of Thursday's paper, Alan Smolinski, the owner of the paper, said that the Palisades had become, quote, a ghost town after the fire, bringing readership effectively down to 0. "We lost the one thing we can't do without, our readers," Smolinski wrote. "You can't print a newspaper nobody reads." Smolinski told readers that the decision to close the publication and its small newsroom was the hardest one he's ever had to make as the owner. "It's all the harder because we nearly survived," Smolinski wrote. "Everyone knows that newspapers have struggled. Everyone knows that many have been shut down from coast to coast. But at the Pali Post, we kept going strong for so long." Smolinski, an entrepreneur who bought the paper in 2012, wrote that the publication had reached 6,200 subscribers and that in some years the paper broke even. But after the devastating Palisades fire, he wrote, businesses that previously advertised in the Palasadian Post were destroyed or lost customers, making it difficult for them to afford advertising. While the paper will close, it may not be the end for the Palasadian Post. In an email, Smolinski said if someone were interested in buying the paper, he would consider selling. Still, the announcement of the closure was met with understanding and disappointment from readers. Smolinski said that he received a number of emails from readers sharing gratitude and grief. "I've been overwhelmed by how many community members have reached out to me and the newsroom," Smolinski said. "It's a real testament to our town." For Gabriella Bach, who now lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the news that the Palasadian Post was closing was personal. The paper was one of Bach's early reporting jobs in her career. "I'm very grateful for that experience," Bach said. "I was definitely thrown into big stories very early on and had a really great community around me that was very aware of that and very supportive." The Palasadian Post ran Bach's marriage announcement. Its office was where her colleagues threw her a baby shower, and the birth of her son was announced in its pages. Not only do I have memories there, Bach said, but the Palisades in general has just been rocked so hard with fires and everything. The Palisadian Post covered the Palisades fire from the day it began on January 7th as a small 20-acre fire. Since then, the paper has published dozens of articles about recovery efforts, environmental impacts, and businesses that had been able to reopen since the fire.
In news out of Washington, the EPA Zeldin works to placate angry Make America Healthy Again moms. Lee Zeldin, the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, flashed a smile as he addressed a webcast hosted by the Make America Healthy Again movement. "We want to make sure," the former New York congressman said, "that your members have a seat at the table and that we're able to directly engage and communicate." It was, in many ways, a hostile audience. Recently, several prominent MAHA activists circulated a petition urging President Trump to fire Zeldin, saying that he was prioritizing the interests of chemical manufacturers over the well-being of American children. They point to the agency's efforts to loosen restrictions on harmful chemicals and to approve new pesticides, including two that would contain what are internationally recognized as, quote, forever chemicals, end quote, that are linked to serious health risks. And they say the EPA is breaking Trump's promises to make America healthy again. "I'm horrified by what's happening at the EPA right now," said Courtney Swan, a MAHA activist and nutritionalist and a petition organizer. "The agency's gone in the completely wrong direction. It's completely against Make America Healthy Again." Under Trump, the EPA has also been working to loosen limits on pollution from smokestacks, tailpipes, and producers of oil and gas. But the Make America Healthy Again activists are focused on pesticides and chemicals, worried about potential leaks to rising cancer rates, as well as infertility. It's a concern shared by Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. The tension between Make America Healthy Again activists and the EPA threatens to create a rift within Trump's base. Some of the movement's leaders say they will work to make children's exposure to pesticides and other toxic chemicals an issue in next year's midterm elections. Alexandra Munoz, another activist and a molecular toxologist who was at this meeting, is opposed to any loosening of regulations on toxic chemicals. She said that she provided Zeldin with her written arguments against changes that have been proposed by the Environmental Protection Agency. The agency is opening the gate for harmful exposures that can impact children's development and health, she said. Tracy Woodruff, a professor in maternal and children's environmental health at the University of California, San Francisco, said the activist had raised some valid concerns about chemical exposure, even as she took issue with the science behind other Make America Healthy Again priorities, like rolling back vaccines. They were tapping into an idea that is a huge area of unregulated exposures to the American public, to children, and the government hasn't dealt with them. Kelly Ryerson, a Make America Great influencer and foreign investment banker who calls herself the glyphosate girl on social media, wants the president to reconsider the political appointees at the agency. When is the Environmental Protection Agency going to step up, she said. Clark was more blunt. The Make America Healthy Again moms have absolutely had it with people like Nancy Beck and Kyle Kunkler, she said. This could not be more fox guarding the henhouse. For now, Zeldin's strategy has been to promote programs already in place at the Environmental Protection Agency as part of the Make America Healthy Again agenda.
Well, Ted, we've come to the end of another broadcast day here, and you've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Monday, December 15th. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Ted Jackie
and Ed Howard, and we wish you a pleasant day.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you. Coming up next on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the New York Times Magazine. At noon, we have today's USA Today. Stay with us for these readings and more. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision,